Well, hey, y'all, I'm Lori with Faith Based Birthing, and I hope you're having an amazing day. So, let me tell you what's happening. My life has drastically changed. And so, the way that I'm able to communicate with you guys is changing as well. So, what I want to do is I want to put as much time and effort into getting the information to you all that you want and that you need and that you're asking for. But what we're going to do is I'm going to take what you're sending, I'm going to pre record some things to answer specific questions that I'm getting either inside the group or through DMs. And, or, sometimes even I think some of you guys are commenting on the YouTube channel, or even other people are commenting on the YouTube channel. So I'm going to answer questions that I'm getting from people about what their needs are in pregnancy and birth and what they need to learn, know, and understand. So we're going to record it. And then we're going to push it in. It may be pushed in as a live because sometimes the live gets more people on. But here's what will happen when it plays. I will be live in the comments. So if you ask questions, I will be able to answer your questions by texting back. And then if I need to do a follow-up video really quickly and answer any of your questions, then I will do a follow-up video and I'll just pop that on my phone or something. But if you can see behind me, we are traveling. We are full-time traveling in our fifth wheel now as a family of 6. And so it's a little crazy right now for me to be able to get recording time. And so there are times when my husband is able to take the kids and he goes out and I record a whole bunch of stuff to get out to you guys. And so that's what I'm doing right now is I'm recording a whole bunch of stuff to get out to you guys so that I can start answering the questions that you're asking inside of the group. Because if I don't pre-record it, well, nobody's here, y'all just might get a show. It's like, I tell everybody, it's a circus and we have multiple showings daily. So you never know what you're going to get, right? So that's why I'm recording and then pushing in, and then I will be in the comments able to answer your questions live. And that's how we're going to do this for a little while. We also have a podcast that's launching. We have a book that's coming out. We have the YouTube channel that has other stuff on it. But in this group is where I'm going to be communicating with you guys to make sure that you're getting the information that you want and that you need so that you can have the birth experience with God at the center that you desire. Okay. So all that said, the first thing that I want to talk about is how to achieve a natural birth in a hospital setting, because I've gotten a lot of questions from you guys on that specific thing. Okay. So for those of you who don't know my story, I've had 2 natural births and in the hospital, and I've had 2 home births that were accidentally unassisted home births. Okay. So my 2 natural births in the hospital were very, very different. So the first time I went in and I YouTubed my way through birth, I thought, I've got this. No need to worry about that. And I ended up laboring for a ridiculous amount of time. So my water broke at 2:30. My jeans were still in. So once your water breaks, a lot of times your water breaks later on, right? But I was in that 10% where the first 2 times my water broke first. That was my first sign of labor from anything. No contractions, nothing, just my water broke. And I didn't know what I was looking for the first time. I had no clue. That was not my intended birth plan at all. I was going to labor nice and long in a big jacuzzi tub at my parents' house and, then go to the hospital. That didn't work out. But after your water breaks, this is some good information here, you will keep gushing. I did not know this. A friend of mine told me this, and I'm thankful that she did. She told me this like 3 weeks before I gave birth. She was like, Lori, my water broke. And then after it did, it just kept gushing. And nobody told me that. So take towels with you to the hospital. So after my water broke, I put on jeans. I'm getting ready to go to the hospital and my water gushed. And so then I had to put those jeans in the dryer because I didn't have anything else clean. My other jeans were still completely wet in the washer. And I had washed all my pregnancy clothes, right? And so I had that one pair of jeans clean at that moment, right? Why would I do that? Because, I'm past due already. But anyway, so we showed up at the hospital at like 4:30. And I walked up and I said, hey, my water broke. I'm having contractions. I'm pretty sure I'm in labor. And they're like, that's sweet. Because this young girl at the desk, I guess, thought that if my water had truly broken and I was truly having contractions, I wouldn't be standing there talking to her so calmly. But, whatever. So the nurse was like, well, we'll have to test and see. And she pulls it out and she goes, oh, well, I mean, that is fluid. And it turned whatever, the color is. She's like, that is it's not spinal fluid. Goodness, that is amniotic fluid. So you're in labor. Yeah, congratulations. And, we're just going to go ahead. Let's get the ultrasound machine. Let's go ahead and take a look, make sure the baby's in the right position and all that kind of stuff. And it was an older nurse. And so I let her do that whole thing. I wasn't, well versed on everything at this point. This was almost 13 years ago now. So anyway, um, she looks and she goes, "Oh, looks like we've got, about an 8 pounder in there. We're 8'1" maybe. And all right, let's get you all set up and you just stay comfortable right there in the bed." I said, "Oh, no, no. I'm going to stand up." And I requested a mobile monitor. She said, "Sweetie, all the batteries are dead on our mobile monitor, so you'll need to stay in the bed." And I said, "Actually, I'm not going to stay in the bed. If you want to do intermittent monitoring, we can do that, but I'm going to be standing up." She said, "Well, I will talk to the doctor about this." I said, "Go ahead." I was trying to be respectful, but she was at the end of her shift. She was older and set in her ways, and she was having a very difficult time with this young girl pushing back. So anyway, she comes back in and she says, "The doctor said that you have to be in the bed." I said, "Well, you can tell the doctor that I'm not going to be in the bed, and shift is going to change shortly, so his shift will be over too, as well as yours." I was nice. I was as nice as I could be in this whole situation. But anyway, so she walked out very flustered. And I'm telling you all of this to say I had only YouTubed my way through birth. I hadn't had birthing classes. I hadn't done all the things that I should have done leading up to birth. But I was headstrong enough and stubborn enough that I knew what I wanted and I knew what the research said was a better outcome for birth. And y'all, I didn't choose natural birth because I was some crunchy mom. I chose it because I had been diagnosed with multiple sclerosis several years before, and I didn't want to do an epidural that would interfere with my extremities. That's the only reason that I ended up choosing a natural med-free birth, okay? And again, there's two terms: natural birth, physiological birth. Natural birth, we typically refer to an unmedicated birth. Physiological birth is the complete process of birth without any interference, the way God intended it to be, okay? So keep those two terms in mind. Anyway, so I'm telling you all this to know that you never know what you'll have to speak up for and what you'll have to fight for. That's why your birth plan is so important. Your birth plan is for you, not for the doctors, just FYI. And so you want to know what to do to speak up for the birth experience that you want. Okay. So anyway, so that was my first encounter of having to speak up for my rights and speak up for myself, was fighting her on whether or not I was going to stay in the bed. Thankfully, there was shift change, and another nurse whose name happened to be Lori as well came on. And she said, "Honey, we will get you set up with intermittent monitoring. Everything is fine. Your vitals are good. And we can just move forward with that." And she was fantastic. And my doctor came on as well because, it was 9 o'clock. It was 9 o'clock, I think, the first time that I saw him. But shift change was like at 7. So I had those 2 hours with more nurses to be able to be up and on my own. But so she checked me around 11:30, I think. And I didn't know about cervical checks. I didn't know that it didn't matter. And she said, "You are at a 9, and you have a golf ball size swelling on your cervix." That's what she told me. And I think if you lay down, then that swelling will go. You need to lay down on your left side and that swelling will go away. And then you'll be good to go. And so here's what I can tell you about that experience of laying down. Standing up versus laying down. This was not a pain-free labor for me. It was not as painful as I thought it would be, even with standing up and going through contractions and, squatting and all that. It was not as excruciating as I thought it would be, but it was not pain-free. And so I laid down on my side, and that was the most excruciating pain I have ever had in my entire life, from cracked bones to a spinal headache, which is, if you've ever had one of those, that's like, you just kill me now. But that was the most excruciating pain I've ever had in my life, and the worst part of my labor experience. And that convinced me, hands down, that women were not meant to lay down in birth. Because if I had been in the bed that whole time going through all those contractions like that, it would have been miserable. I can tell you that. So that convinced me that women were not made to lay down. If you're not going to have an epidural, you want to be up and mobile. Now, the other thing that I didn't know about that birth experience is that the baby hadn't dropped. Jackson hadn't dropped down yet enough. Even though she comes in and she texts me, "Oh yeah, the swelling's gone and you're at a 10 and you're ready to push." I wasn't ready to push because he was still too high. And so I wasn't ready to push. It's important to know not only dilation and effacement, it's important to know the stages, right? And so you need to research that and know that. We go over all this in depth in our courses and in the book. And so it matters that you know all this stuff too, okay? But anyway, just research it. Again, I'm going to tell you things, but I want you to know what you know because you know it, not because I told you something. Okay. So you have to research it because that gives you the strong foundation for you to have the conviction and the knowledge and the wisdom and the gumption to be able to stand up for what you want. Okay. So anyway, he hadn't dropped down far enough. Now, there were lots of reasons for that. Later on, I realized I had used a birthing ball wrong. I hadn't stayed up and mobile. And so there were reasons, and it was my first baby. So there were reasons that he hadn't dropped, and I was not ready to push, even though I was at 10 centimeters. And so they told me to push, and I pushed from 12 until 3:55 when he was actually born, which that was ridiculous. I shouldn't have done that. They started threatening me with a C-section, right? All this stuff. But, and that mattered because I was exhausted. They could have worn me down if I hadn't have been as stubborn as I was. They could have easily worn me down into, okay, let's just go get him out, right? But again, I didn't know. I didn't know that I wasn't ready to push. I could have advocated for that differently. My birth could have looked differently. And not that it was a horrible outcome, but I did end up having an episiotomy, which I regretted later, and still have issues from that, just being honest. So it mattered that I prepared better before I got in that room to know what I needed to know to be able to advocate, and I hadn't done that. So hindsight, again, you can only go forward with what you know. Once you know things, then you make adjustments and you make changes and you move forward. So the next thing that happened was, let's see, I'm pushing, and I had asked for no coaching on my birth plan. Now, Lori had read, but other nurses in the room had not read my birth plan. And my OB knew my birth plan, and he was there because it was during the day and it was his hospital day. So that was, he was there, and he was great for that birth. He sat down at the bottom of the bed forever waiting on me to get this baby out. So, because he was right there, he kept being right there, and no one could figure out why I couldn't get him over, right? And so I asked to move, and that was just a gut instinct. I had asked for no coached pushing, and this nurse walks in the room and starts coaching me, and I see Lori look at her and go. So I was thankful for that, but I said, can I change positions because this doesn't feel comfortable? Being on my back, trying to push like this is not working him down. Can I turn around and get on my knees? And they were like, yeah. Like, this was the first time they'd ever had somebody request that, and they were like, this is so weird, whatever. So I said, I need to move. After this contraction, I'm going to flip around over onto my knees. And he said, well, as long as I can see you. I was like, I really don't care if you can see me. I have to change positions. And so I flipped over, and I was able to get him down once I got over on my knees. And the thing that I didn't know I was doing, I was instinctually unlocking a dystocia. I had no clue about dystocias or what that was, but I was instinctually unlocking that. And not completely. I didn't unlock him all the way, because if I'd known to raise my leg up, make shifts, whatever. We can talk about the details of all that kind of stuff later with, a midwife or a doula when we talk to someone. But it matters that you understand this stuff exists, and knowing and having this knowledge, or having people in your corner. That's why doulas matter in the room. That's why midwives matter. That's why pelvic floor matters. So having this knowledge would have saved a lot in that, but I had no idea that there was a dystocia. So I got him worked down and they said, well, he's about to come. Can you turn back around? They wanted me on my back because that's what they're used to. That's what they're used to. That's easier for them. And that helps them in that situation. And I didn't know enough to say, actually, no, I'm going to make more progress and do it faster if I stay like this right here. So I turned back around and he said, Lori, I think if I cut you, then he'll just be right out. And sure enough, he was. Now, when he came out, he went immediately skin to skin. And we noticed that he was quite large and he was raising his head up and he was looking around. And we were all like, oh, wow, the baby's raising his head up. And so the nurses come over to rub him, right? And I said, no, please don't rub him right now. Just leave him on me, right? You can put the blanket. I said, you can put the blanket over him, but just leave him on me. So that was the next thing. And then they came over to put the stuff in his eyes. And I said, no, we're not doing that. And they said, so you're not doing any typical newborn. I said, no, I'm not doing any typical newborn stuff. And we're going to wait to weigh him. And so they got him and they weighed him and y'all, he was 10.5. And we were like, oh, no wonder. I was pushing out a bowling ball and I had no idea, right? So then he went on, he latched and he ate for like 2 hours. Like he had a workout, right? Now the other thing that I didn't know in that birth was that I had a right to request a breastfeeding consultant to come. And I didn't know that as well. So every hospital that has a lactation consultant or an IBCLC on staff, you have the right to request that they come and help you, and they should come and help you. So just FYI for that. But that was my first natural birth experience at the hospital. I had to fight from the time that I walked in for what I wanted, and I had to know what I wanted. Now, I didn't know what I want at every turn. And so had I known, things would have looked differently. Again, not a horrible experience, but still could have been better for me, for Jackson, for my husband, for everybody all the way around, for the doctor, the poor doctor having to sit there forever waiting on Jackson to come out, right? Like it could have been better for everyone. Just being very clear about that. Okay. Now, birth number 2, I jokingly told my doctor, I had done, not only childbirth classes, like I had went through certifications for becoming, a childbirth educator and a doula and things like that. So like I had went a step above and taken the classes to actually teach these things and practice these things. So I had the knowledge this time, right? I had the knowledge walking in. So I told my doctor jokingly, I was like, I'll get here like an hour. I'll give you an hour, when I get to the hospital. I still wasn't going to do a home birth at this point because I didn't feel like I was supposed to for some reason. And I don't know why. But, and I had a friend that questioned me. Mary Catherine was like, are you sure you're not supposed to do a home birth? And I was like, I don't think so. But anyway, maybe I was and I misheard that. But anyway, what it led to was great testimony. So my second natural birth in the hospital was, everybody said, oh, second babies get bigger as you go. And I was like, no, that's not going to happen. This is, like 8'3". He's going to weigh 8'3". We're not going above 10'5". I can tell you that. We're not even doing another 10-pounder. He's going to weigh 8'3". I have no clue where 8'3" came from. But anyway, so my water broke first with him again, first sign of labor. And so I called my friend and I said, hey, who was a doula. And I called my friend and I was like, hey, do you want to come and sit with me and be here for Jackson? I don't know how long this is going to last. But my water just broke and, Joseph's going to go back to bed and sleep for a little while and you can hang out with me. And she's like, yeah, sure. So she comes and she's laughing at me because I'm walking around, I'm folding laundry, I'm doing dishes, just normal stuff. And every time a contraction would come, I'm testing things out and I'm testing my positions. And I'm like, let's see. Oh no, that hurts. If I do this, oh no, that hurts. Y'all, I was literally testing out positions to see what caused pain throughout my labor. And what I discovered was that standing up, and I call it the Penny Simkin rhythm. If you don't know who Penny Simkin is, go look her up. She's like the grandmother of doulas, right? And so if I stood up and I did this and I patted my belly and I rocked and moved my hips, then there was no pain. There was no pain at all. Now, fast forward and I find out that there's a scripture that actually kind of alludes to that. And I was like, oh my gosh. And the Hebrew word that is used there is cool. And it means to dance, to sway. Yeah. Anyway, we'll talk about that later. And that's deep in the courses and books and stuff like that. But anyway, so That was the only thing that didn't cause pain when I had a contraction, was standing there and doing that. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Let me see what's going on here. And so I made it, like, as far as, I felt comfortable making it. And once I started feeling more of a bearing down, I was like, okay, I'm feeling more tightening up here and pushing down. So let's go on to the hospital. I woke my husband up, took a shower, woke my husband up, and we went on to the hospital. So we get there, I walk up, and again, my water has broken. I'm having regular contractions. And, I think that I'm in labor, active labor, ready to roll. She goes, well, we'll test and see. So she gets in there and she starts to check my amniotic fluid to see if that's in fact what it was. And she goes, oh. So then she gets on, the speaker or the phone or whatever. And she goes, hey, I need you. She's calling to come up and, do my IV and all that kind of stuff. She's like, I need you up here now. She's at like 8.5, 9. And I was like, I'm where? She's like, you're already at an 8.5 or a 9. Like, I'm going to have someone else come in. Like, she was blown away. And she said, so can you just lay right there and let's get the bed ready? And I said, no, I'm going to stand up while you're doing all that. And she goes, okay. And then she told me something else. I don't remember what it was. And I said, no, actually, I'm going to do this differently. And she said, do you have a birth plan on file with us? And I said, yes, I do, actually. She goes, okay. And what I appreciate is, in the chaos of all of that, she and another nurse actually took time to go and look at that quickly so that they could help me. Now, I'm standing there with my husband and I'm, going back and forth, and she's saying, she switched. She was an amazing nurse. She switched to saying, do this, to, do you want to do this, or can you do this? Right. And so I would answer the questions of what I could or didn't, or wanted to do. Sorry, there's a fly flying around. Anyway, and so what ended up happening is the doctor got there. I showed up at the hospital at 3:01, and my son was born at 4:11. So the hour that I said I would give jokingly really turned out to be that that's what it was. But it was a doctor on call. And what I appreciate is, in the middle of all that, he came in and asked to be briefed on my birth plan as well. And so I'm in the middle of, sorry, let me back up a little bit. So they're getting ready and they said, okay, how are you feeling? How are you doing? And I'm standing there and I go, oh, I feel like I gotta poop. And she goes, that means you need to be on this bed now, right? And I had never experienced fur. This was my first experience with fur, and my body was kicking into that fetal ejection reflex, and it was starting to push the baby through. If I'd stayed there and then, had, put pillows down or whatever, he would have been right out in my arms. No big deal. I didn't know that. I got on the bed, right? I had doula training. I had childbirth education training. But fur, fetal ejection reflex, was still something that I didn't fully understand. So, and I'm saying that to say, even if you've had tons of training, there's still going to be new things that you're going to learn with every single birth. I don't care if you're a midwife, if you're a doula, if you're an OB, if you're a labor and delivery nurse. When you have your own, or even when you're delivering multiple, right? When you're involved in birthing, helping birth babies, right? You're going to learn multiple things in multiple births, and it's going to be something new every single time. It's not going to be the same across the board. So I didn't fully understand fur and what was happening. And so I got back on the bed, I laid back, and about that time, the doctor walks in the room as he's crowning, right? And he goes, there's a head. I was like, yeah, there's a head. And so then this nurse walks in after that contraction. And when the next one starts, I'm taking my deep breath in, right? And she starts counting, going, push 1, 2. And he literally turned around and looked at her and said, I think she's doing fine. And I was like, oh, thank you so much. That was amazing, right? But anyway, and so with the next contraction, he was out, and y'all, he pushed off. You could see him push off the top of my uterus and shoot out. And I did not even give the doctor a chance to debate it with me. I mean, he had kind of looked at my birth plan, right? So he should have known. So I reached down and I grabbed my baby and I pulled him up to my, I pulled him up to my stomach because the umbilical cord was still there. So I laid him on my stomach until we got some more of the cord, and then I pulled him up because it was a shorter cord. But anyway, so um, I had nurses come back and thank me after that birth. The nurses that were involved come back and thank me because they had never witnessed anything like that. They had never witnessed someone not screaming and crying and cussing and whatever else, that I wasn't saying anything, that I was talking, I was joking, I was narrating everything that was happening all the way through. And they never experienced anything like that. And they said, how did you get this far? What did you do? And I said, I don't know. All I can tell you is that I experimented with things. This is what caused stuff. This is what I found. And standing up matters. If you don't learn anything else from this, standing up matters. And so they were just like, thank you for for allowing us. I'm so glad I got to witness that. Now, here's the fun part. When they took him to weigh him, guess what he weighed? 8'3" on the button, right? So I started crying and the nurses were like, what? And so I got to tell that part of the testimony of like how I don't know where 8'3" came from, but I prayed it, I claimed it, and God met me in that moment. And that's how much we matter to him. That's how much we matter to him, that he gives us a gift like that. So anyway, that was a testimony, not only for my heart, that was for them. That was for the nurses as well and the staff at the hospital. So throughout that stay, there were more things that I had learned along the way that I had to advocate for. That included some of the newborn screenings. That included, just some other random things. They ended up actually having a meeting on us in the hallway. And the charge nurse was saying, it's okay. She doesn't have to do or sign anything. If you have a patient like this in the future, just know that you don't have to make them do this. This is our procedure. This is not necessarily law or anything else that is required of them to follow through and do. So that was a good outcome, I think, for that. It started good conversations. And again, I tried to be as respectful as possible. But here's the other thing that I will say is anytime that you're in that situation where you're going against typical stuff that's in their mindset to do, more than likely you will have a caseworker called to come and evaluate your case. So they called a caseworker on me both times. The second one was a little bit worse, honestly, because there was more that I had, denied or whatever. And so, and again, I did it as respectfully as possible. My husband did it as respectfully as possible, but we were firm in our decisions. So the caseworker was called. And if that ever happens to you, when a caseworker is called, be polite, be respectful, understand that they're there because it's their job. Somebody told them they needed to come up and do this. They don't necessarily want to be there any more than you want them there, okay? And so again, it's relational intelligence. It's understanding that these doctors and these nurses, they are doing routine things over and over and over again. And when you go outside of their norm, it's a little uncomfortable for them. And so if you get a caseworker called, it's the same thing. Just use relational intelligence, answer the questions, and understand that the doctors and nurses thought that they had to do that for some reason in their mindset, because there was something off in the way that they thought things would go, if that makes sense. So anyway, caseworker came, she was like, there's obviously no issues here. I'll file my report, we'll be done, whatever. I do know people that have had run-ins with caseworkers that it hasn't been that way. At the same time, those people were a little more belligerent. So be respectful. I understand you're exhausted. You've just been through birth. There's a lot going on. You're learning a new person, but be in that moment where you still have your head about you and ask the Holy Spirit for discernment as you walk through every step of the way, as you're communicating with the OBs, as you're communicating with labor and delivery nurses, as you're communicating with lactation consultants, CNAs, anyone on staff, caseworkers. Ask the Holy Spirit for discernment to be able to communicate properly with people, but still be firm in your convictions and what you believe. Okay. You do have rights. We'll talk about that later on, but you do have rights in all of this to be able to voice this. And that is given to you by the Code of Federal Regulations. It's written in there. And they can't stray from that. Like those are federal regulations. That's law. Okay. So anyway, if you have questions about this, this is to tell you, and I told you my story to tell you that you can absolutely have a natural hospital birth, but know that anytime that you walk into the hospital, it's going to be managed. That's what the hospital is there for. It is there for managed care. A birthing center is a step up from that. It's not going to be as managed care, but still so. And a home birth is another step up. But again, not all midwives are cut from the same cloth, not all OBs, not all pediatricians, not all labor and delivery nurses, not all pastors. Like not everybody's cut from the same cloth. So don't think just because you pick a home birth midwife that you're going to have some crunchy midwife, because you may actually pick a midwife who's more comfortable in a facility. And I know a couple of those. So just be aware that you and your partner have to know what you want for your birth experience and be willing to advocate for that and know and understand, if there's any detours along the way, what you want to do at that detour. That's why the education matters. That's why you start before, as soon as you find out you're pregnant, that's why you start the research. That's why you start everything. You don't wait until, 32 weeks and go, what kind of birth do I want? That's not what we do. But anyway, so I'm telling you all of this to tell you that a natural hospital birth is absolutely possible. A physiological hospital birth is not. 99.9% chance you will not have a physiological hospital birth. Even if you're that person that walks in and drops the baby, in the ER, reception area, whatever, it's not going to happen because there's still going to be some form of managed care. That's what the hospital is for. It's there for managed care. And the reason that you're going there for the most part is probably because there's an element of feeling safer there, and that's okay. But you have to know what you're getting into, and you have to be willing to make allowances for that. Okay. So anyway, that is the first segment of that. If you have any questions, please let me know. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have and do follow-ups on this. And hopefully as you're, if you're typing questions in here, I'm answering them right now while this is, being played. But please, 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 if you have anything or want to know any more about any specifics, then let me know. And I'm happy to answer those questions. So I hope you have a fantastic day. I will talk about my home births later and what physiological birth actually looks like for those who have asked that question. So I'll see you later.